Hello boys and girls, this is Mrs. Martin and welcome to Story Corner. Today we're going to be reading a story called The Tiny Seed. It's written and illustrated by the very talented Eric Carle. You might recognize that name because he's written many other books for children like The Very Hungry Caterpillar, which is perhaps his most famous story. He's also written The Very Busy Spider, The Very Quiet Click Beetle, and The Grouchy Ladybug. Those are some of his most popular stories. But today, the story is called The Tiny Seed. And in The Tiny Seed, we get to see how one little itty bitty seed travels and searches for a place to land and to grow. And I want you to pay careful attention to what the tiny seed needs to grow. There are actually 5 things that a plant needs to grow. So see if you can notice what those 5 things are throughout the story, and then we'll talk about it at the end. This is The Tiny Seed by Eric Carle. It is autumn. A strong wind is blowing. It blows flower seeds high in the air and carries them far across the land. One of the seeds is tiny, smaller than any of the others. Will it be able to keep up with the others? And where are they all going? You can spot the tiny seed right there in the back, trailing behind. One of the seeds flies higher than the others. Up, up it goes. It flies up too high, and the sun's hot rays burn it up. But the tiny seed sails on with the others. Another seed lands on a tall and icy mountain. The ice never melts, and the seed cannot grow. The rest of the seeds fly on, but the tiny seed does not go as fast as the others. I like to try and find the tiny seed on each page. I think it's right there. Now they fly over the ocean. One seed falls into the water and drowns. The others sail on with the wind, but the tiny seed does not go as high as the others. One seed drifts down into the desert. It is hot and dry, and the seed cannot grow. Now the tiny seed is flying very low, but the wind pushes it on. Finally, the wind stops, and the seeds fall gently down on the ground. A bird comes by and eats one seed. The tiny seed is not eaten. It is so small that the bird does not see it. But do you see it? Can you spot it? I think it's right there. Now it is winter. After their long trip, the seeds settle down. They look just as if they were going to sleep in the earth. Snow falls and covers them like a soft white blanket. A hungry mouse that also lives in the ground eats a seed for his lunch, but the tiny seed lies very still, and the mouse does not see it. Now it is spring. After a few months, the snow has melted. It is really spring. Birds fly by, the sun shines, rain falls. The seeds grow so round and full that they start to burst open a little. Now they are not seeds anymore. They are plants. First, they send roots down into the earth. Then their little stems and leaves begin to grow up toward the sun and air. There is another plant that grows much faster than the new little plants. It is a big fat weed, and it takes all the sunlight and the rain away from one of the small new plants, and that little plant dies. The tiny seed hasn't begun to grow yet. It will be too late. Hurry! But finally, it too starts to grow into a plant. So if you look carefully, I see something growing out of the ground here. That is called the stem, and one little leaf. And then down growing into the ground are the roots. The warm weather also brings the children out to play. They too have been waiting for the sun in springtime. One child doesn't see the plants as he runs along and, oh, he breaks one. Now it cannot grow anymore. The tiny plant that grew from the tiny seed is growing fast, but its neighbor grows even faster. Before the tiny plant has 3 leaves, the other plant has 7. And look, a bud! And now even a flower. But what is happening? First there are footsteps, then a shadow looms over them, then a hand reaches down and breaks off the flower. A boy has picked the flower to give to a friend. It is summer. Now the tiny plant from the tiny seed is all alone. It grows on and on. It doesn't stop. The sun shines on it and the rain waters it. It has many leaves. It grows taller and taller. It is taller than the people. It is taller than the trees. It is taller than the houses. And now a flower grows on it. People come from far and near to look at this flower. It is the tallest flower they have ever seen. It is a giant flower. All summer long, the birds and bees and butterflies come visiting. They have never seen such a big and beautiful flower. Do you notice the face in the sun? 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Eric Carle is famous for always having faces on his sons in his pictures. Now it is autumn again. The days grow shorter, the nights grow cooler, and the wind carries yellow and red leaves past the flower. Some petals drop from the giant flower and they sail along with the bright leaves over the land and down to the ground. The wind blows harder. The flower has lost almost all of its petals. It sways and bends with the wind, but the wind grows stronger and shakes the flower. Once more, the wind shakes the flower, and this time the flower's seed pod opens. Out come many tiny seeds that quickly sail far away on the wind. And that's the end of the tiny seed. So interesting to me, the end where the seed pod opens and these seeds all start to carry along on the wind. It reminds me of the beginning of the story, when we first meet the tiny seed and it starts its journey looking for a place to grow. When a story ends like that, ends in the same way that it begins, we call that a circle story, boys and girls. And the tiny seed is an example of the circle story. Those new seeds that came from the seed pod are going to travel looking for a place to land and to grow. And I want to think about what a plant really needs to grow. And I want you to think about it too. So you can pause the video here and think about what you already know a seed needs to grow. And then we can talk about it when you turn it back on. All right. Hopefully you were able to think of a few of the 5 things that a plant needs to grow. The 5 things that a plant needs to grow are soil, which is a fancy word for dirt, sun, water, space to grow, and air. Those are the 5 things that a plant needs to grow. You're going to notice below this video that there is an activity for you to do. In this story, we see how the tiny seed goes from a little seed all the way to a great big giant flower. And so I thought this would be the perfect time for us to think about putting things in order. We call that sequencing. And so on the handout that I've attached below, you'll see when you click on it that I'm asking you to tell what happens first in the story, and then what happens next, what happens after that, and what happens last. So you'll be telling about 4 events in the story from the beginning to the end. All right, boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed hearing the story of The Tiny Seed by Eric Carle. This week's lessons, you can click on more of the links and videos to learn more about Eric Carle, who was the author and illustrator of our book, The Tiny Seed. I hope you enjoy looking through some of that information, and I look forward to sharing a new story with you next week. All right, be well, friends. Bye-bye.